Welcome the Lord's chosen. The instant a chosen soul stops doubting their own nature, panic begins to ripple through those around them. There is a peculiar rhythm in the way people behave that mainstream psychology rarely addresses. Yet those walking a spiritual path feel it right away. The deeper your insight grows, the more others start behaving as if they have wandered into a truth detector without warning. Honestly, watching them squirm is almost entertaining. They will flash you a smile while their inner being quietly slips out the back door, whispering, "Absolutely not. We are not engaging with this level of awareness today." Long before you consciously recognize that your perception had sharpened, someone else had already picked up on it. They sensed the shift the moment you stopped reacting on autopilot and began responding with genuine presence. That is when their whole system lit up like a broken electrical panel. Suddenly, every gesture you made seemed to function like a spiritual scan. Every pause felt like you were filing away observations. Every reply you offered came across as startlingly accurate, as though you had privileged access to what they were planning. And here is a reality that amplifies this entire dynamic. Research shows that individuals become noticeably tense when they suspect another person can see right through them, even if they are not doing anything wrong. So picture how much more intense that response becomes when they are in the presence of someone whose insight has been refined through hardship, lessons, and divine orchestration. They did not test you out of curiosity. They tested you because your very existence makes their concealed thoughts feel suddenly exposed. Their humor grows awkward, their energy turns restless, their spirit begins erasing its own tracks. And the most amusing part is that they will claim they were simply checking on something. Yet the entire time they are studying you, the way people watch scary films, bracing for the moment the protagonist finally notices the creature is right behind them. So yes, you have someone probing your perceptiveness, but ever since that first attempt blew up in their face, they have been walking around unsettled, hyper-alert, and quietly praying, "This individual understands far too much." Step into the chapter where the chosen one stops doubting and everyone else begins to sweat. Point 1. They challenged you because your certainty threatened their disorder. Certain individuals test you not because they want to comprehend you, but because standing beside someone with genuine internal clarity makes their own disarray impossible to conceal. Your presence radiates a brightness they were not equipped for, and that is precisely why they poked at your insight in the first place. They needed to find out whether the composed self-assurance you carried was authentic or simply another performance like their own. When they discovered it was not a performance at all, that is when the dread took root. Your certainty did not come from pretending to understand everything. It came from enduring enough, witnessing enough, and absorbing enough to eventually place your trust in your inner compass. Meanwhile, they were still juggling conflicting ideas, hidden motives, and insecurities they hoped no one would notice. So when you entered their world carrying that grounded presence, it disrupted the familiar chaos they had grown comfortable living inside. People who flourish in confusion, mixed signals, and emotional murk always feel threatened by someone who moves with clarity and intention. They tested your intuition because they were searching for weaknesses. Perhaps they expected you to answer without thinking. Perhaps they hoped you would fall for a deception. Perhaps they assumed you would overlook the contradiction in their statements, but your certainty refused to let anything slip through. Every time you saw past their energy, their disorder felt more visible. It was not that you were condemning them. It was the fact that you were not lost alongside them. That is what terrified them. Your certainty forced them to face their own lack of direction. It illuminated the confusion they had been running from within themselves. It revealed to them a kind of stability they could not pretend their way into. And when someone living in emotional disarray realizes they cannot manipulate or distract someone like you, their final strategy is to test you to find out if perhaps they were wrong about your resilience. Regrettably for them, every test only reinforced what they dreaded most. You are not operating at their level. You are operating above it. And nothing frightens a chaotic spirit more than a person whose certainty cannot be rattled. Point 2. Their test was never genuine curiosity. It was self-preservation. When someone tests you, it is easy to assume they are curious, attempting to grasp how your mind functions or to observe your thought process. That is never the real story. The truth is far more telling. They are testing you because your presence leaves them feeling exposed, vulnerable, and unsafe in a manner they cannot govern. Your intuition, your awareness, the way you appear to see what is truly unfolding. It is like a mirror they were not prepared to face. Their test is not about learning. It is about shielding themselves from the truth you quietly embody. They approach with casual inquiries or subtle provocations, pretending it is innocent, but underneath it is pure survival instinct. They are trying to discover if you can be swayed, if there is a vulnerability they can exploit, or if they need to step back before you unravel the patterns they have worked so hard to conceal. The very act of testing you mirrors their own fear. The clearer and more grounded you are, the more defensive they become. Because somewhere deep inside, they recognize you can see through the narratives they tell themselves and others. Your responses are not just answers. They are revelations to them. Every time you respond with calm precision, they sense their attempts at control slipping away. They realize that their words, their subtle tricks, and their manipulations are transparent to someone operating with genuine awareness. Their test is not designed to trip you up. It is designed to protect them from the embarrassment of being outmatched by a presence they cannot comprehend. And the more they probe, the more evident it becomes that their fear is self-generated. You are not creating tension. They already carry it. Your energy simply causes them to acknowledge it. They believed they were gauging your boundaries, but what they actually uncovered was the brittleness of their own. Every test they direct at you bounces back onto them, exposing their insecurities, their hidden motives, and their desperate need to feel secure in a world where they believed they held the reins. They tested you for defense, not curiosity, and in doing so, they uncovered themselves far more than they ever intended. Point 3. Your intuition read them before their pride finished speaking. There is a precise moment when someone realizes they have been observed in a way they did not anticipate. It is not when you speak. It is not when you act. It is when your intuition locks in and deciphers everything about them before they have even finished presenting themselves. People who test you think they hold the reins of the conversation, shaping the narrative to observe how you react. What they fail to realize is that your perception does not depend on their words. You are reading energy patterns, intentions, the parts they try hardest to bury. Your intuition catches the pauses, the tension in their voice, the subtle signals that reveal what they are really thinking, and it links details that even they are unaware exist. They approach with understated tests, trying to see if you will overreact or reveal weakness. Every question, every remark is a probe designed to measure you. Yet your intuition does not merely measure, it interprets. It absorbs their behavior, calculates the underlying motive, and responds with a clarity that requires no justification. By the time they formed their complete thought, you had already registered their intent, evaluated it, and adjusted your own energy accordingly. That gap between what they plan and what you perceive is where the fear takes root. They begin to sense that no matter how carefully they craft their tests, you are already several moves ahead. Your awareness does not wait for permission. It does not get fooled by charm, misdirection, or ego. It operates independently, scanning the hidden dimensions behind their actions and reflecting them back with quiet precision. And the instant they realize you have known all along that nothing they attempt can surprise you, their ego begins to unravel. They may still try to play the game, but the energy has shifted. What was meant to probe your boundaries now exposes their own. Their confidence wavers because they understand, even on a subconscious level, that you operate on a level beyond manipulation, beyond deception. Your intuition reading them before their ego finishes speaking is not simply perception, it is revelation. It uncovers their strategy, their fear, and ultimately their limits. And in that uncovering, they begin to respect, fear, and above all underestimate you at their own peril. Point 4, they realize too late that you do not simply observe people, you decode them. What unsettles people about you is not the fact that you pay attention. It is the fact that your attention carries depth. You do not just hear what someone says, you break it down, link it to their energy, compare it to their behavior, and register what does not align. While they assume you are simply listening, you are actually processing information they do not even realize they are revealing. By the time they finish a sentence, you have already understood the intention behind it, the insecurity hidden within it, and the history that shaped it. Most people survive on surface-level perception. They hear and respond, they see and assume. But you do not operate like that. Your mind naturally moves deeper, peeling back the social mask, tuning into the real story beneath the performance. You hear the words, but you also hear the gaps between them. You see the actions, but you also recognize the motive driving them. You notice patterns they have carried for years, not because you try to, but because your mind is designed to catch what others miss. This is why so many people misread your quietness. They think you are passive or uninterested, or simply keeping to yourself. Meanwhile, you are catching inconsistencies, remembering details, sensing emotional shifts, and mapping out the truth without ever needing to confront them directly. You do not decode to judge, you decode to understand. But the moment someone realizes how much you understand, the panic sets in. It does not happen immediately. At first, they feel at ease, perhaps even confident. Then they begin noticing how accurately you respond, how effortlessly you address the things they never said aloud, how you anticipate their reactions before they fully express them. That is when it hits them. You were not observing them like everyone else. You were translating them, and by the time they become aware of it, it is already too late. You have seen what they hide, sensed what they deny, and understood the parts of themselves they have not yet admitted. They cannot go back to pretending in front of someone who sees that clearly. That is the quiet power they never expected you to have, and the exact reason they fear they underestimated you. Point 5. They wanted to see if you were easy to manipulate and discovered you were unreachable. Some people approach others like a puzzle to solve or a game to win. They test boundaries, push buttons, and drop emotional bait to see who reacts first, hoping to find an opening where they can control the outcome. With you, they thought it would be the same. They assumed your reactions could be predicted, that your emotions could be swayed, or that a cleverly placed trap might make you falter. They did not realize you operate on a level where their attempts at control are not only visible, they are ineffective. You move through life with a sort of internal map that others rarely notice. You have experienced enough, observed enough, and learned enough to recognize patterns the moment they begin. Their tactics meant to confuse or manipulate are not surprises. They are data points. Every bait, every subtle trap, every hidden agenda becomes something you process effortlessly. You do not overreact. You do not get defensive. You do not stumble into their setup because you see the structure of it long before they even fully implement it. What makes you unreachable is not arrogance. It is awareness. It is the refusal to play someone else's game while simultaneously understanding it better than they do. They thought they were testing your limits, but the reality is that you have already defined your boundaries internally. Their attempts to provoke, manipulate, or control collide with something unshakable. And that collision is exactly what unnerves them. The frustration comes when they realize that every move they made to corner you or catch you off guard was transparent to someone who did not need to explain themselves. Their subtle manipulations became obvious, their tactics predictable, and their energy exhausting to maintain. And the worst part for them, you never even needed to call them out. Simply by existing within your own centered awareness, you showed them how irrelevant their strategies were. They wanted to manipulate. They wanted control. Instead, they discovered something far more unnerving. You are untouchable in a way that leaves them second-guessing everything they thought they knew about you. Point 6. They underestimated you because they mistook your calm for ignorance. Some people only understand intensity, loud reactions, and dramatic responses. If you are not visibly defending yourself or constantly proving your intelligence, they assume you do not have much going on internally. That is why your calmness confused them. They thought your quiet energy meant you were not paying attention or that you did not understand the full picture. They did not realize that your stillness was the result of years of learning how to manage your emotions, protect your peace, and pick battles that actually matter. Your calm was not a lack of awareness. It was evidence of it. You have been through enough situations where reacting too quickly only gave other people power. You have learned that real strength often looks like composure, and real intelligence does not announce itself. You do not need to expose what you know, and you do not need to flex your intuition for validation. That kind of maturity is foreign to people who rely on chaos to feel relevant. So when they saw your steady presence, their first assumption was that you were slow, naive, or easy to outsmart. What they never considered is that your calmness comes from understanding people better than they understand themselves. You give them space to reveal their intentions. You let them talk. You allow them to expose the gaps in their story. Your silence is not empty. It is collecting information. You do not react out of impulse because you prefer to respond from awareness. That is the part they were not prepared for. They only realized their mistake when the situation shifted, when their games did not rattle you, when their attempts to push you emotionally fell flat, when the things meant to confuse you did not land. Suddenly they had to face the truth. Your calm was not ignorance, it was depth. It was the quiet power of someone who sees the entire landscape instead of just the moment. By the time they understood that your stillness was strength, not cluelessness, it was already too late for them to try to reposition themselves. You had already read them, evaluated them, and outgrown them, all without raising your voice or breaking your peace. Point 7. The moment you saw through them, their confidence cracked. There is a fragile kind of arrogance people carry when they assume they know the game, and everyone else is just playing along. They test you because they believe your presence can be measured, controlled, or predicted. They think their subtle probes, their emotional pushes, and their veiled manipulations will reveal your limits. But the instant you saw through them, their foundation began to crumble. That quiet recognition on your part was not just awareness. It was a mirror they could not look away from. They realized in that moment that you were not just paying attention, you were understanding. You were connecting dots they did not even see themselves. Every word they spoke, every tactic they tried, every small signal of insecurity, they knew you had already decoded it all, and that scared them in ways they were not prepared to admit. Confidence that had seemed so solid suddenly felt flimsy. Their ego, which had been the armor allowing them to manipulate or dominate, began to chip away. Their testing was meant to assert control, but when you caught on, it reversed the roles entirely. Suddenly, you were not the one being measured. You were the one observing, analyzing, and anticipating their next move. That first sign that you could read them so clearly was enough to ignite panic. They had underestimated the depth of your perception, and once that miscalculation became obvious, their energy shifted from casual testing to subtle defensiveness. Every subtle smile, every joke, every attempt to mask insecurity now carried tension. By seeing through them, you did not just expose their methods. You exposed their weakness. Their confidence was not shattered by confrontation. It cracked under the weight of being understood better than they understood themselves. That is why people like this become jittery, hesitant, and second-guessing. They wanted to test you, but the truth is that your insight was testing them, revealing the insecurities they had spent so long hiding. And from that moment forward, they walk carefully knowing that the person they thought they could manipulate is already 3 steps ahead. Point 8. What freaked them out was not your prediction. It was your accuracy. People can handle guesses. They can handle assumptions. They can even handle suspicions. What they cannot handle is someone who speaks to the truth of a situation before they have even fully admitted it to themselves. That is what your intuition did. It did not operate like a random guess or a lucky hit. It landed cleanly, directly and uncomfortably on the exact thing they were trying to hide or avoid. Your accuracy felt like exposure. It was not that you were predicting events or behavior. You were reading their energy with such precision that it bypassed their words altogether. Before they explained their intentions, you already sensed them. Before they clarified their feelings, you already knew the emotional direction. That level of accuracy is unsettling because it removes the buffer. They rely on denial. When someone's inner world is understood without being verbally expressed, they lose the illusion of control over how they are perceived. And the moment your intuition hit the mark, they felt naked. Everything they thought they could disguise with charm, confidence, or vagueness was suddenly out in the open. It did not matter if they laughed it off or tried to shift the topic. Your insight lingered. It pressed on them quietly, reminding them that you were not operating on the surface where most people stay. You were tuned into the deeper signals, the ones they did not expect anyone to catch. Accuracy like that makes people nervous because it raises bigger questions in their mind. If this person sensed that, what else have they picked up on? How much do they already know? What if they have seen parts of me I have not dealt with? That is where the fear comes in. Not from what you said, but from the potential of everything else you are capable of seeing. Your intuition creates a ripple of self-awareness in others, and many are not ready to face it. They wanted you to misread them, to get something wrong, to show that you were as blind as they hoped. Instead, you were spot on. It is not prediction that unsettles people. It is precision. And your ability to feel the truth before it is spoken makes them realize they are dealing with someone who cannot be fooled, blurred, or easily dismissed. Point 9. You did not react wrong. You reacted like someone who outgrew their games. People testing you are usually looking for a reaction that fits their narrative. They want drama, overreaction, or confusion, something that proves they still have control or influence over you. They expect you to stumble into frustration, to mirror their chaos, or to get tangled in the emotional traps they set. When that does not happen, it unnerves them. Your response, or rather, your lack of reactive display, throws their entire plan off balance. Your neutrality is not passivity. It is a form of mastery. It signals that you have evolved beyond needing validation or proving yourself to anyone who thrives on manipulation. You respond not because they push buttons, but because you operate from discernment, seeing the bigger picture where their games look petty and predictable. They thought they could trigger a pattern in you that they have seen work countless times with others. Instead, you demonstrate that your energy cannot be hijacked. That calm, grounded reaction exposes more than their test. It exposes their strategy. It shows them that while they have spent time perfecting manipulation, you have spent time understanding cause, effect, and personal boundaries. Every subtle attempt to provoke is rendered irrelevant when met with awareness. They expect the emotional equivalent of a roller coaster. They get a quiet observer who has already mapped the ride and decided not to board. People do not realize that evolution is a quiet revolution. It is not announced with words or spectacle. Your neutral response carries weight because it reflects control over self rather than control over others. They misread it at first, assuming you are disengaged or unaware. Then slowly they recognize it is not disengagement, it is mastery. You did not make a mistake by not reacting the way they hoped. You responded exactly how someone who has outgrown their games responds, with clarity, calm, and discernment. And that is far more unsettling than any dramatic reaction could ever be. Point 10. They thought they were testing your intuition, but you ended up testing their integrity. People who think they are clever always assume they hold the upper hand. They test you because they believe they are the ones observing, analyzing, and drawing conclusions. They approach with hidden motives, subtle questions, and small traps meant to measure how aware you are. But what they never consider is that every move they make reveals far more about them than anything they could ever expose in you. Their tests become confessions, their behavior becomes data, and their reactions become the real truth. When someone tries to probe your intuition, they expect you to reveal insecurity or uncertainty. Instead, what unfolds is a silent assessment of their character. Integrity cannot hide under pressure, even the subtle kind. The moment they sense that you are catching on, everything shifts. Their energy gets jumpy. Their tone gets sharper. Their explanations get longer than necessary. They start clarifying things no one asked for. That is when you see the cracks, because confident people do not over-explain. Honest people do not get defensive. Secure people do not test others to begin with. The real exposure happens in how they react when their little test does not go the way they planned. They expected to find weakness in you, but instead, they revealed vulnerability in themselves. Suddenly, the person who came to measure your intuition finds themselves under a spotlight they never agreed to, but one their own behavior created. Your intuition did not need to attack them. All it did was observe, and the more they reacted, the more their integrity or lack of it became obvious. Their distance afterward was not coincidence. Their shift in tone was not confusion. Their sudden politeness or nervousness was not random. Everything they did after testing you was a direct response to their fear that you saw something they were not ready to confront. They tried to study you, but they exposed their inconsistencies, their motives, and the parts of themselves they have been trying to keep hidden. They thought you were the subject. They did not realize you were the mirror, and that is why they backed away, because your intuition did not reveal your weakness. It revealed their truth. Point 11. They did not expect you to notice the source of their questions, not the words. Most people listen to what is being said. You listen to why it is being said. That is where everything shifts. When someone comes to you with questions wrapped in friendliness or curiosity, they assume you're going to take the words at face value. They think you will respond normally, maybe even overshare, because that is how it works with people who only process things on the surface. But you do not operate on the surface, and that is what they underestimated. You do not get distracted by the wording. You track the energy behind the sentence, the tone, the speed, the timing, the subtle hesitation, the emotional temperature hidden underneath. You pay attention to what they are hoping you will not notice. While they are presenting their question like it is harmless, your intuition is already tracing the motive behind it, like a trail of breadcrumbs. You are not hunting for a lie. You are identifying the intention they did not say out loud. This is what threw them off. They expected you to answer what they asked. Instead, you responded to what they meant, and that is where their act started to collapse. Because when someone asks a question with a hidden agenda, and you answer in a way that exposes that agenda, without accusing them directly, it shakes them. It makes them feel seen in a way they were not ready for. Your responses did not just address the conversation. They dismantled the purpose behind it. When they asked something to test your knowledge, you answered with clarity that showed you were already ahead. When they asked something to see if you would slip, you stayed grounded. When they asked something to measure your vulnerability, you gave them nothing to work with. And when they asked something hoping to extract information, you noticed the extraction attempt before they even finished the sentence. That is the part they did not plan for. Someone who listens past the words, someone who sees the intention forming before the sentence lands, someone who cannot be fooled by tone, charm, or fake innocence. Their entire act depended on you missing the motive. But the moment you detected it, the performance did not just weaken, it fell apart completely. Point 12. They realized you carry a type of awareness they cannot lie in peace around. There is a specific kind of discomfort people feel when they are around someone who sees more than what is presented. It is not about confrontation or calling anyone out. It is the quiet recognition that their usual tricks, masks, and polished performances do not land the same way with you. Your awareness is not loud, but it is present. It shifts the atmosphere. It makes people second-guess the parts of themselves they normally hide with ease. Dishonesty needs darkness to survive. It needs confusion, distraction, and people who accept things at face value. But your presence brings a kind of clarity that does not rely on words. You can sense when someone's energy does not match their expression. You can feel when something is off, even before they finish speaking. And because you do not force anything, because you do not aggressively question or accuse, the truth ends up revealing itself naturally while you simply stand there, grounded and observant. People who rely on manipulation or half-truths are used to blending in. They are used to slipping through conversations without anyone really noticing their inconsistencies. But when they encounter someone who pays attention with intention, someone whose intuition stays alert even in quiet moments, it unsettles them. They realize they cannot relax in their usual way. The version of themselves that works on everyone else does not work on you. Your awareness does not expose them with words. It exposes them internally. It makes them reflect. It makes them nervous. It pushes them into suddenly over-explaining things that did not require explanation. It makes them watch their own behavior in real time, trying to fix what they do not even fully understand. The lie they once delivered comfortably now feels heavy and risky, because they know you noticed the shift before they even finish delivering it. You do not have to accuse anyone. You do not have to voice what you know. Your energy alone holds a mirror, one they never planned to look into. That is why they become restless. That is why they avoid eye contact. That is why their confidence feels thinner around you. Your presence disrupts dishonesty because you do not just hear what people say, you see who they are. And for someone hiding behind performance, that realization is terrifying. Point 13. They wanted to study you but ended up feeling like the one under investigation. Some people approach you with the mindset of a researcher. They think they are stepping into your life with control, observing your reactions, testing your sensitivity, and measuring your intuition like you are some sort of experiment. They come in confidently believing they are the ones doing the analyzing. But what they do not realize is that the moment someone brings that kind of intention toward you, they automatically reveal more about themselves than they intended. Their tests do not stay one-sided for long. They boomerang. Their behavior shifts subtly, and your intuition picks up everything. You notice the tone changes, the strategic questions, the emotional bait they drop to see what you will do. You watch the small inconsistencies in their stories. You pay attention to the parts they skip over quickly. You observe the way they check your reactions when they think you are not paying attention. And without even trying, they become the ones under a quiet, invisible scan. Not because you want to expose them, but because their actions activate your awareness. That reversal is what shakes them. They start feeling as though you are seeing too much. Details they thought were shielded. Motives they believed were undetectable. They begin to notice that you are not reacting like their previous targets. You do not take the bait. You do not fall for their emotional switches. You do not get confused by their strategic chaos. Instead, you observe calmly. And that calmness is unsettling to someone who relies on manipulation to maintain control. Suddenly they feel watched, not in a paranoid way, but in a spiritually naked way. They feel your intuition reading the truth behind their words. They feel the weight of your awareness catching every inconsistency. Their test becomes their exposure. Their attempt to understand you becomes a mirror reflecting who they are. And the very energy they meant to use on you turns back on them, revealing patterns, habits, and intentions they have been hiding even from themselves. They were not prepared for the shift. They came to analyze you, but your presence flipped the dynamic. And instead of you being the subject of their little experiment, they ended up realizing they were the one being quietly, effortlessly decoded the whole time. Point 14. You are not being tested anymore. You are being avoided because they know you know. There comes a point when people stop trying to test your intuition, not because they are satisfied, but because they have seen enough to understand they cannot get away with anything around you. The shift is subtle at first. The conversations become shorter. Their tone becomes more cautious. Their questions lose their confidence. They do not probe anymore. They do not poke at your reactions. They do not try to read you like they used to. Instead, they keep their distance, because being close to someone who sees them too clearly is uncomfortable for people who live behind masks. The fear did not begin at the moment they tried you. It began long before that. The moment they realized your intuition was not a guess or a vibe or a coincidence. It was accuracy, precision. It was the type of knowing that does not need confirmation because it comes from a place beyond logic. When someone feels that kind of awareness directed at them, especially when they are used to fooling others, it shakes them. It exposes the weakness in their strategies. It reminds them that their usual tricks will not work. Not here. Not with you. They avoid you now, not out of arrogance, but out of self-protection. They feel seen in a way that strips away their performance. They cannot maintain their facade around someone who catches the intention behind their words before the sentence is even finished. They know you have already answered the real question, the one they were never going to ask out loud. Do you see what I am doing? And your energy, your silence, your consistency, all said the same thing, yes, completely. That realization is what made them retreat. Not guilt, not shame, exposure. They knew that continuing to test you would only lead to more of their truth slipping out where they cannot control it. So they pulled back, avoided eye contact, kept their distance, and acted like nothing happened. But you felt the shift immediately. You're not being tested anymore because they know the results, and the results proved something they were never prepared to face. You understood them long before they even tried to understand you. Conclusion: what started as subtle tests, probing questions, and cautious observations has now fully revealed itself. You were not being measured to see how far you could bend. You were being reflected back the truth of those around you. Every attempt to manipulate, every little tactic, every hidden motive bounced off your awareness and landed squarely on the ones who thought they were in control. Your clarity, accuracy, discernment, and intuitive strength did not just see the games. They exposed them, dismantled them quietly, and left no room for deception. From their initial probing to their eventual avoidance, the pattern is undeniable. You are not just intuitive. You are untouchable in ways that make others second-guess, retract, and retreat. You operate on a level that does not respond to chaos because you have outgrown it. You do not need to fight. You do not need to explain. Your presence alone disarms, deciphers, and reveals the truth, and that is a power most people will never understand. In essence, this is not about them testing you. It is about the inevitability of your awareness. The world may try to challenge your perception, question your intuition, and gauge your reactions, but you have already surpassed their games. Their fear, their defensiveness, and their retreat are proof that your insight is not just real, it is transformative. You did not just pass their tests, you became the standard they were not ready to measure against. Stay blessed always.